Hello everyone and welcome back to another edition of Blueprints Banter. I'm Steve Cona, President and CEO of ABC Florida Gulf Coast Chapter. Thanks once again for joining us. Today we're talking all about the legislative session in Tallahassee, and today I am proud to welcome my guest, Ron Pierce with RSA Consulting. Ron, welcome.
Awesome, thank you, Steve.
You bet. And for those who don't know, Ron and RSA have been part of our chapter. They're like our chapter family, doing our legislative lobbying for us, helping supplement our state team, doing our local stuff. So Ron, thanks for being here.
You're welcome.
And you guys just wrapped up a marathon legislative session. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I don't know where to begin. I know we have 30 minutes, so I can probably talk the entire 30 minutes about kind of what's happened in Tallahassee. So, session wrapped up. We were supposed to be done in May, as you know. We ended up going 105 days. And since we've been home, we didn't even wrap up the budget until middle of June, by the way. Governor didn't finalize the budget literally until June 30th. Budget went into effect on July 1st. We've had lots of questions about, so why even go 105 days? Like how does that happen from a political standpoint? Probably the two biggest undercurrents that every session is a little bit different, but we kind of faced this year was, really you had House leadership along with Senate leadership kind of pushing back on the governor a little bit from the standpoint of it's time for the legislature to be the legislature and the executive branch to be the executive branch. What I mean by that is, legislature has gone out of its way to work with the governor over the last 6 years. Really this year you kind of saw for the first time some pushback on not only governor's priorities, but really having the House and Senate kind of take a little more leadership on some of their priorities as well.
Right.
So that alone, I think, that caused a bit of an undercurrent. And then the second one was, the House kind of coming into session said they wanted to really get spending under control. And so, last year's budget was $117 billion, where we kind of ended this year, especially after vetoes. This year's budget is just shy of $115 billion.
Wow.
So they actually cut out almost $2 billion of recurring revenue out of the budget. That was really a priority of the House to try to get spending under control and do a major tax package. I mean, if you look at probably the major undercurrent that kept the budget from getting to the finish line in the first place was really looking at the largest tax incentive in our country, our state's history, $900 million for reducing altogether sales tax on commercial leases. I think we're the only state probably in the country that has that. That's a big win for probably a lot of our members, by the way. So if you remember that today,
it's a big deal for us.
That is collecting, is paying a lease, you don't have to collect any rent on that anymore or any sales tax.
Yeah, no, that's great. So what's interesting is, obviously we had this marathon session, but ABC still continues to be successful. A lot less bills passed this year, right? But ABC was able to pass two of our legislative priorities.
Previous session, they passed 325 bills. This year, they still passed a good number, but it was like 270, so it was definitely less than the previous year. ABC has done an incredible job, by the way, of positioning themselves to have really good relationships with House and Senate leadership, with the governor's office, which positions us every year to be able to try to get things done. Mm-hmm. Probably one of our biggest, I think, wins this year from an ABC standpoint was apprenticeship.
Yep.
Not only the funding, but more importantly, how the funding ultimately was released down to us. I mean, I'll kind of oversimplify it. You can probably add a little bit of color is probably the two major things it did was make sure that if anybody that's collecting those dollars as it comes down kind of the pipeline to us, that it caps the amount of money on what they can keep at 10%, which is a huge win.
Right.
Because you had a lot of organizations who were keeping a lot more than that. Bottom line is, us and others were advocating for is, we want as much dollars as we possibly can to get down to the student.
Yep.
The more dollars we can collect to go to the students, or obviously the more that we can, more students we can serve. Then obviously at the end of the day too, make sure that transparency and accountability was a part of that. To make sure that if you're collecting and spending dollars on what's kind of that return on investment for the state as well.
Yeah, and for us, we're one of the largest providers of apprenticeship training in the state. So to be able to actually find out what the actual number is and then work with our college and school district partners to make sure that we're getting the funding that we deserve. It's a big deal for our industry. We're going to be able to train a lot more people, so this is a big win for us. The other
bill, I know it's been something we've been working on for a while, so I think that's a win. And I think there's some additional things we could do there in the future. I mean, I think one of the things we'd really love to push for, I think it's going to take some time. This maybe happens under the next governor,
right?
But really have some direct funding that would come to us versus having to go through somebody. That's something that was put on the table early, kind of, said, well, there's some concerns with that, but there may be an opportunity in the future where to have that funding come directly to the provider like ABC.
Yeah, let's talk about sometimes we're up there, and because we have a presence during the entire session, whether it's you guys, whether it's Carol, whether it's our friends at Gray Robinson. We have a great legislative team. Let's talk about how we play defense sometimes, because that's sometimes more important than offense.
A lot of times you go into a session thinking, oh, there's like only 1 or 2 issues we have this year. The next thing you know, 2 or 3 bills pop up, a big package is introduced. And I think one of the biggest things that we and I think others on your team do is really share with legislators what unintended consequences could be of something that they've introduced.
Right.
It could be from an apprenticeship standpoint, it could be from a permitting standpoint, it could be from something they're trying to preempt local government on, but really just trying to make sure that having you and others that are kind of industry experts can share with them kind of what these unintended consequences are is super important.
Yeah. And there was a really bad lien bill this year that we were able to, get delayed and nixed. So that's good.
Yeah. And we know in some of those bad bills, like on that one, Steve, we know it's coming back.
Right.
Person that introduced it is senior. He's going to probably want to introduce it again.
Right.
I think based upon some of the arguments we made last year, we'll obviously make them again this year with the House and Senate leadership.
Yeah. Let's talk about leadership since we're on that topic. The Gulf Coast has been blessed with a great legislative delegation. You want to talk about who some of the key players are and who they're going to be and all that stuff?
Yeah, I think having key leaders from Tampa Bay are super important to our success as a chapter. We're very blessed right now. If you just look at kind of some key positions for the 25 and 26 sessions. Number one, Ed Hooper, Senator Hooper, is the appropriations chair from the Florida Senate. You've got Lawrence McClure, Representative McClure is the appropriations chair for the Florida House. Having 2 appropriation chairs from the Tampa Bay area is such a tremendous, incredible opportunity for the region. Nick DeSigley, Senator DeSigley over in Pinellas County is the chair of the Transportation Economic Development Appropriations Committee. Senator Danny Burgess is the chair of the Education Appropriations Committee. So we've got some people in some really key positions. Then in addition to that, you've got future leaders that are coming up over the next couple of years. Jim Boyd, who's the current majority leader of the Florida Senate. He'll be Senate President following Ben Albritton. You've got Jennifer Kennedy over in Polk County. She'll be Speaker in 2 years. And what's great about Jennifer, she's from Polk County, she's from our region, but she'll also be the first female Speaker of the Florida House.
Yeah, which is amazing.
Yep.
And not to mention Rep. Lauren Mello, who carried the water for us down in Fort Myers on our apprenticeship training bill. I mean, we have leaders all along the Gulf Coast, and they're really helping the construction industry push the agenda, so we're very thankful for them.
And give Lauren a plug, because she was a huge advocate for that, and she's now running for the Florida Senate. I think she'll be a big advocate over there. So the good news is we'll have her for 8 years more over in the Florida Senate as well.
Yeah, which is fantastic. Let's talk about Senator DeSigley, and he passed a very good bill because obviously with all the hurricanes that we faced last year, he provided some support and relief with his hurricane preparedness and response bill that he passed.
Yeah, so Senate Bill 180, which passed, probably the biggest thing that it did was to ensure that permitting was a problem, so that making sure that try to come up with an expedited permitting process after a hurricane hits. Probably the biggest thing that it did was to ensure that a local government doesn't have the ability to pass ordinances that are more strict or tougher in a place where you're trying to have redevelopment come back. There were some local governments, especially some of the smaller beach communities, that were trying to do that. So to ensure that development can come back in a timely fashion, but also it comes back in such a way that we're not putting more burdens in place where builders have to try to jump through additional hoops to be able to get something done. That was a big win because over the last couple of hurricane cycles, we've seen that.
Right.
So to ensure that doesn't happen 6 months kind of time frame after the hurricane hits is a good win for the industry.
Yep. In the next couple of weeks, we have our state legislative conference down in Naples, where we come up with our legislative agenda. Talk about the importance of groups like ABC coming up with an agenda ahead of time, going through the process. Why is that so important?
So I tell people all the time, if you're lobbying for the first time when you show up in Tallahassee, this year's session starts early, it starts in January. So if you show up in January and you're just kind of starting for the first time on what your agenda looks like, or really advocating for the first time, you've kind of missed the boat. So I think having a conversation as an association early on, having it in July, kind of figuring out what those 1 or 2, 3 priorities are going to be, coming up with why we want to do it, and then more importantly, develop a strategy on who the bill sponsors are going to be, start talking to House and Senate leadership. You use that kind of in July, August, September. Again, since session's early, we go back to committee weeks in October. So you really want to position yourself to have that planning conference early, come up with a strategy, use the committee weeks to your benefit to educate and potentially move some of your bills if needed.
Yep. And let's talk about, it's not just once sessions in play. Like, let's talk about all the work that you and I put in to build these relationships with our electeds prior to session.
So Steve and I always get the question, now that session's over, what are you guys doing?
Right. Yeah.
You're going to the beach? I mean, what's happening?
Right.
I think you're just as busy, if not busier, in the off season.
100%.
Because it's the constant building and rebuilding of relationships. You know, you and I are already dealing with the 2026 election cycle.
Yep.
You know, so because of that, there's constant campaign events, you know, we're having to go to candidates we're supporting by bringing them in and having meetings with them, supporting them financially from the association. So that constant kind of building and rebuilding of relationships in the off season is so important. And you want to do that early in some cases, like when somebody announces and we're supportive of them, early support, get on board early with the campaign, because we have the window between now and January to support folks. And then when we get back from session in March, hopefully it's March next year, is there's a quick runway right to the primary. So you and I kind of follow the philosophy, which I love, is kind of let's be the first on the beach of let's support people early, get support early, and then we can support other folks in the back end as well.
Yep. And you know, obviously elections are so important. You know, regardless of whether we have majority Republicans or majority Democrats, the issues are constant. Nothing's guaranteed in Tallahassee.
Well, and especially when you and I are throwing curveballs, because you know there's about to be a special election at the city council, so you know there's a number of candidates have announced for that seat. In addition to that, I think what we're going to see over the next probably week or two, I think you're going to see Jay Collins appointed lieutenant governor, so that's going to create an open seat in the Florida Senate. There'll be dominoes because of that, so we'll have people running for that. So you and I will start getting phone calls pretty quick about who's running or not running for the Florida Senate. You've got Blaise Ngolia up in Hernando County. That's somebody that has been a big supporter. Is a home builder. Somebody that's from the industry. He's getting appointed chief financial officer by the governor next week. That's going to create dominoes as well. So not only looking at the 26 election cycle, but also looking at the potential special elections between now and the end of the year as well.
So to wrap this up, it's an ongoing process, right? It never stops. The political piece of what we do for the industry never stops. But let's talk about RSA for a second, and let's talk about how important it is for RSA to have construction under their, under their house, but also the relationships that we have with all your other clients, like your healthcare folks and your sports folks. Let's talk about how we work all collectively to kind of move move Florida forward.
Sure. So RSA Consulting, we're 16 years old, have a team of 11, represent about 100 different clients, have clients in a lot of major industries, sports and entertainment, healthcare, education, obviously construction, just to name a few. ABC's been a client for 12 or 13 years probably, so you're one of the early ones, so thank you for being one of the early members of the RSA family. What I love about working with organizations like this is there's so much synergy with some of our other clients. Healthcare is a great example. Recently you and I were talking about a lot of our healthcare clients as they're building facilities, they run into issues. And so meeting with them and having a conversation, which we did, put you in contact with some of our healthcare folks, have conversations about, as you're building these facilities, what does that look like? What are the challenges that you're facing, some of the hurdles you're facing? So working with them to get a better understanding of that. Sports and entertainment, we represent the Tampa Bay Lightning, Amalie Arena, Raymond James Stadium, all facilities that our members have been involved and work in. Other development projects, the Water Street project, we're very involved in them. They've been a client over the years, so we have a couple other development clients that you all are engaged with development that's happening around, some of their stuff as well. So there's a lot of synergy there, and I think what's important about it, especially with you and I kind of living and being a part of the Tampa Bay community, is from an economic development standpoint, development and construction are such a key economic driver of our region. So making sure that anything we can do to support that and have our clients in a position where they can also support that, I think is critical and a key to our success as a region.
So we're going to keep pounding that rock, right? We're going to keep doing it and keep doing all the things that are going to make our industry the best place to work. I will tell you that permitting is still going to be a challenge. I mean, I think that's going to be an issue that's going to come up in our legislative session, and something where we're going to have to work really hard to, because statewide it's a mess.
Yeah.
And, you know, with all this growth, permitting delays, you know, that can't happen because, you know, obviously it locks up the process.
Sure.
And we want to make sure that permitting is something that's on everyone's forefront. But Ron, thank you very much for the wrap up today. I do want to thank our Advantage Club sponsors, our Diamond sponsors, Adams Group, DeWalt, Gaylor Electric, Ginyard, Milwaukee Tool, Piper Fire Protection, and Sims Crane. Thanks for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Blueprints and Banter.